Hi, I want to talk about some topics in philosophy or Sufism. It kind of relates to consciousness studies too, that are very strange, and very few places or philosophers they talk about this stuff. But it comes up as you study, or I have come across it, and they're worth looking into. I was talking to my friend, Mr. Moezzi. He was giving me a ride when I wasn't too sure about my eyesight, and I was telling him some of the stuff that I had experienced or my psychic experiences, and he was saying that it could be a good idea to put these in writing. You know, somebody might be interested in studying this stuff. And then I told him that a lot of this stuff is so strange and so bizarre sometimes that I have trouble believing them in the first place myself. Then how am I gonna take this stuff and tell somebody else, hey, this can happen, or this is part of the religion of Islam, or this is what actually Quran talks about often. But I think that many philosophers and psychics, they often get accused of being a witch, or accused of lunacy, or being a real troublemaker, that they're trying to overthrow government, or they make people very uneasy because the stuff they talk about is is bizarre, or has applications or consequences that shocks society, and then the social order gets threatened or something like that. But actually, personally, I have very little interest in overthrowing any government. Well, I would like to see Israel get reoccupied by the Muslims, but other than that, I really have a little interest in overthrowing other governments. I Well, I'm not the American government. I don't want to go into third world countries and overthrow their governments. But a lot of this stuff comes back to studies in consciousness, and some of it also relates to quantum physics. There is a physicist, and I think he's getting on this same route. Uh, I think he got basically the same ideas that are in Eastern philosophy or in Sufism, and that's many physicists, they're getting the clue that the universe is really nothing but consciousness, and this consciousness, which has manifested itself as a material world, or the world that we can see, is it must be intelligent. There is no doubt. There is too many arrows pointing in a certain direction, and also that the universe cannot be anything but a simulation. It's just like in Star Trek Next Generation, somebody or something or some intelligence brought all these decorations, the material world, and all these creatures, because she wanted to experience a scene or something that was important to her. Well, we are all here like actors, and we think that the stuff that happens around us, or that the way we interact with the material world matters, but in fact it doesn't matter. And it's this consciousness that wants to experience itself, or aspects of itself. There are other things that are important, and this is where she's going. Well, I'm using the word she because if we look at the universe as a quantum computer, as very sophisticated computer that's making a simulation, and if we look at chaos as a representation of a male, and or and order as representation of female, so the universe that we know is intelligent and orderly and is going purposefully about something, then it would be or would have a personality of a female. Well, actually, in ancient times, the Romans, they believed the deity to be a female, and in the much older religions, there were societies that were dominated by women. And then also in Catholic religion, which has a lot of the vestiges of the older civilizations, the deity is represented as a woman. This is not very false. While in Sufism, the divine is also represented as Sagi, the divine barmaid. She brings around the wine and gets you drunk. This is how communion happens. So there is a lot of, it's like a trail that you're going on. All these markers that previous philosophers or thinkers, they kind of hint at it, or they come around and kind of tell you, hey, this is what happened, is really is a well traveled road. I'm not really discovering anything new, or I'm just gonna like retracing something that was already there. Well, basically, I'm going to reiterate some psychic experiences, some verses from Quran, and kind of like point in the given direction. I'm not an experimental physicist. Oh, I wanna relate an experiment Mr. Campbell, or physicist Campbell, he did, and this was I talked about it in the other videos. That was a double slit experiment that he had detectors positioned at each slit, and then behind the detector, when a particle or wave has gone through this slit, there were recorders. Okay, so every time a particle was thrown at the double slit, the detectors and the recorders recorded it. But the important thing that many physicists they miss, he was pointing out that when he opened up the recorders, or when he intended, or very seriously, to open the recorders and see which slit the particle went through, the image on the screen changed to that of the photons being a particle. But even if the detectors and the recorders detected and recorded photon, but he did not care to check it, then the image on the screen would be that of a wave. So the only difference between these two outcomes was that something was either known or unknown to his consciousness, like knowing. Okay, so this is how we know that consciousness is very important and is also part of the universe. And what goes on in consciousness even though it might seem disconnected from the material world, it is makes a difference. Well, if we are going on this route, and what happens in the consciousness uh, is what matters, then right here at this juncture, like 99% of the physicists and experimental scientists, they just drop out, because all our previous uh, sciences, they're all reductionists. They want to make experiments and do this and that, and they all hate confronting this juncture where what happens in my brain or in my consciousness is just as important as what happened in the experimental apparatus or the experiment. Okay, so this kind of is like a milestone. It's like you're coming at the road, and the road is kind of veering to two different directions, and one direction is very well traveled, and many physicists, they will go on that road, and they mess around with the math and string theory, and then there is another one that's more like a spiritual way of looking at things, and see and try to make sense of the universe by the spiritual interpretation. And the spiritual path is not like multiple paths, because many of the older religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Islam, if you talk about Sufism, when you study the outline and the main ideas in these religions, there emerges the same set of beliefs and milestone philosophically or theologically. There is a lot of similarities, even though they were each developed at a different historical period. Then there is a lot of similarities. Well, I talked about these ideas in another video. It was called Consciousness, Meaning, and Deja Vu. So this was basically, I'm going to reiterate these ideas, is that I went to a museum and I had this psychic experience because I practiced psychometry, and some things came to me, okay. But the bigger question is this: why this device or this chair or this historical place where a war happened, why are these images and these sentiments, why are they embedded in this place, and they will come back to haunt any psychic, any good medium will pick this up? Why the universe wants to remember these things versus a million other things that have happened? That's very important, because this points to a direction that the universe is a simulation, and this whoever or whatever that created this simulation, she is interested in some things. Some events are more significant to her than other things, and so these energies would become like embedded in the scene, in a war scene, or in if the two people fell in love in a place, and the place has acquired a kind of charge, and then another psychic comes around and picks that right up. Well, this is kind of important. It's a little bit going off the main track of quantum physics, but this concept of meaning, it comes after studies in consciousness, because to consciousness, meaning is what's important. It means that there is some thing that this quantum computer that we call the universe wants to do. Okay, this points to the like a structural underlying of this whole thing. Okay, that the fact that it's simulation is intelligent and it's doing something. Well, from here, okay, there is really no experiments. There is no you know, you're stuck like I am with sayings of Prophet Muhammad, or soothsayers, or psychics like me. I'm telling you, hey, this is important. Well, I cannot come out and prove it to you by certain calculations, or or Mr. Campbell. He has a much better time because he was able to set up the apparatus, and he kind of finally deduced that what happens in the consciousness is important. Okay, but after that juncture in the road, where we are now here at another point, is much more difficult to prove to you that hey, these ideas, they're really important, they matter. Well, then we are stuck. We are stuck. I will just go back to Quran. What it says. It says that Prophet Muhammad asked God, "Why did you make all these things?" And she said, "I was a hidden treasure, and I wanted to be known." It's like you ask the universe, "Why did you make all this? What is all this stuff about?" And she said, "Well, I want to experience myself. I want to make a mirror. I know that I'm very, very good looking, and I want to look into the mirror and kind of admire myself, admire my higher qualities." Well, so if we deduce that the creatures, the humans, or other kinds of humans that have been, or other creatures, they are like a mirror that wants to, the God or the owner of this simulation wants to look into this mirror and see her higher higher manifestations, the most beautiful, most spiritual, most mathematical, most saintly attributes of herself. So this is the, in my opinion, because I don't have myself any kind of experimental tools to kind of come and prove to you that this is the reason for this simulation. This is, in my opinion, is the reason, because the more creations there is, the greater the technological or material world evolves. It evolves more intricate and more spiritual aspects of this quantum computer, that she wants to look at this. So if we look at it in history, or if we read historical books, we see that a lot of human society, they really deeply admire like spiritual teachers like Jesus or Prophet Muhammad, or people who had been like great social reformers like Gandhi, or humanists, or well, I used to read biography of great mathematicians like Leibniz, or quantum physicists that had discovered fantastic things. So I think, in my opinion, the reason for this simulation is this. And the more a given person acquires or manifests these qualities, the more the universe is going to look at her or him in favors, and greater remembrance is bestowed on her or him. Well, there is other verses in Quran. It says that God tells Prophet Muhammad that if it wasn't because of you, I would not have created the cosmos, because you manifest all these qualities. And then also in the New Testament, usually Jesus refers to himself as the son, like somebody is a righteous son of a king, something like that. And well, there is some Sufi practices that point in this direction. One of them, well, before I go there, there is some other verses in Quran that God remembers all prophets, like Joseph or Yahya or Jesus or Prophet Muhammad, and how they were and how they acted, their spiritual poverty, stuff like that. It's as if the world, the owner of the simulation or this supercomputer, that's the universe, is like going through clips of the older videos and kind of like admiring. Well, I do that, sometimes go through YouTube channels and look at the really pretty blonde, she's so like this. I do that too. Well, this is from the verses of Quran. You can kind of see that where this computer is showing favoritism. That's a very deep structural characteristic of a simulation. You can tell that this simulation is intelligent and prefers certain characters in any drama to others. There is many other characters. Well, the guys that they get thrown out first are people that repeat a given theme, like that the universe has seen like about a zillion times. They're like a little bourgeoisie. He or she is very smart, acquires all this money, and nobody gets a cut of it. She evades taxes, or is a religious leader, or a fake newscaster that comes on, and you think, oh my God, we're gonna get all these religious and spiritual and intellectual epiphanies, but it's not. It's the same shit. Or it's like Trump, promises we're gonna stop all these wars, and then comes out and starts his own. Basically, the characters that do not show anything new, anything divine, anything spiritual, they get ditched right away. Well, I saw, I don't know if this is a joke, some physicists were, how the young physicists, they have to pass their thesis. So they had a step after the dissertation of a certain topic, which was usually very mathematical and physical. Then the last test would be that you had to give a half-hour lecture on something that would just be very, very, very interesting and novel, something that that the other physicists, they had never thought of it in that way, or so well, some physicists would fail their dissertation approval simply because they're such dull characters. There was nothing interesting for the future. All they had made was this dissertation, and it would end up in some kind of library. Anyhow, this is kind of like that. I think that deep structural preferences that this simulation has, it kind of also points to what it is trying to do. So just the novelty, and also that a creature or a human manifests these qualities that are very unusual, very novel, very spiritual, just like a divinity would be if she looked into the mirror and found, oh my God, I never expected to see this here. You know what I mean? Something like that. Anyhow, I think that some point in the future, like some scientist or somebody, they're gonna come and look at these videos, and they're gonna think that this psychic or philosopher, he's the weirdest and the stuff that he talks about is there's no other one like that. But I don't think so. I think that usually there's more than one freak in a circus. Well, thank you very much. I have to now sit and think of what to name this video. I think I might try to go that route with the universe is a simulation. Thank you very much.